The Clemson Tigers are in the top 4 of the college football playoff rankings, and that is sweet for us because it means maybe the ACC is getting a little more love than we think. But what could it potentially mean for the rest of the season as they face a formidable opponent against North Carolina? More than that, can they outlast Alabama and Michigan? Those are the type of conversations we're going to have on today's show with AJ Black from Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's edition of Locked On ACC. I'm your host, Candace Cooper, joined by AJ Black of Locked On Boston College. Each and every week, we talk about weekly reads and rankings, but more than that, we give you some really good content around all of our teams here in the ACC. We are also joined by our friends here at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions do apply. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Clemson is finally in the top 4 for the college football rankings, and they will see themselves in the playoffs should everything go correct here towards the end of the year. But AJ, crazier things have happened, so I don't know how good I feel about Clemson's all the way through guaranteed spot here in the college football playoffs. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a full week of football, full month left of football to go, and you got Clemson with they got the ACC championship game they've got to get through. They've got some tough games. I'm not even gonna rule out South Carolina. I'm sure they're gonna be hungry. They've got some other tough games on their schedule. It could very well easily be a month that's going to keep ACC fans on the edge of their seats.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, college football playoff rankings come out each and every Tuesday evening. And as we're talking about this Wednesday show, Tennessee is currently number 1, followed by Ohio State. Then it is Clemson, and then followed by Georgia, if I have that correct, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, cool. And then you have very closely Alabama and Michigan, who we all know Alabama, I'm sure, is at home seething because they know they absolutely on any given day can beat damn near any of these teams. But more than that, we know that every team ahead of them has to play perfect because if you don't, Alabama's right there in the spot. No questions asked.
Right, exactly.
And I'm thinking to myself, when you look at the SEC and the competition that's before them, I can see why people would be a little upset for Clemson being in a top 4 spot because it's a little bit different over here in the ACC. The drop-off is significant between the ACC and the SEC.
Right. But Clemson has 3 top 25 wins, so
they do.
And I think you can complain about the ACC strength of games playing, against teams like BC and Georgia Tech. But, at the end of the day, when you look at the rankings this week, there are 3 teams that Clemson beat on that rankings. And I think Bama had 1.
Yeah.
So I don't get it.
I don't get the angst, but at the end of the day, you know how people are. It's nothing but to have a nice little think piece when it's all said and done. I will say, as we're talking about Clemson and the idea that they could potentially be in the ACC championship game against a North Carolina team, a lot of people are saying it's going to be closer than what people are assuming, especially because everyone says the Coastal is not that grand, but North Carolina certainly has put up, quite a show, especially offensively. The defense is definitely turning a corner. Second half, they're doing what needs to be done. Do you see Clemson being taken out, knocked out of the college football playoffs if they were by chance to lose North Carolina?
Yeah. I mean, I look at their schedule and, they've got UNC, and if they lose that game, there's going to be a lot of one-loss games, but unfortunately, the ACC is almost a conference where you have to be perfect to get into the college football playoffs.
Yeah,
it's absolutely just the way it rolls, because the SEC is going to get the doubt for a loss. Like if Alabama sneaks in with 1 loss, they're going to get it over Clemson every time, because that's just the way college football rolls. Mm-hmm. And when you have Ohio State and I'm blanking on the other team, Georgia and Tennessee. It just seems like Clemson has to go be perfect to make this. And Whether it's fair or not, that's just the way the game is played right now. And, I think that's kind of just, it's a tough hill to climb for Dabo Swinney and his crew, but they're on their way right now, but they've got some tough ones. And you mentioned UNC, but I look at some of the other games. You got Notre Dame coming up this weekend, which is a big game against the Fighting Irish, who are playing very, very well.
Yep.
And you have Louisville, who just smashed Wake Forest.
Yes, absolutely.
Coming in a couple of weeks too. So they might not even make it undefeated to the ACC championship game, which is crazy.
That's fair. And then that South Carolina game, we all know rivalry weeks. They had 3 times fast, brings out the best of everybody. And of course, South Carolina is probably playing some of their best upset ball, I will say, this season. And they're definitely trying to beat the Clemson Tigers when it's all said and done. So good there. Now, when it comes to just rankings, we all know Clemson is the best, and we can lament on that all day long. Here in the ACC, it's pretty much them and everybody else. And it's fine. We've made peace with that. Just been like that for quite some time. It's getting better. We can say that, but it certainly has a way to go. I want to start with the worst of them, because I feel like I know how this is going to go for you, and I want to give you the floor to let this out. Let's start with the teams who are struggling. Let's start with Boston College, because I know that has to be your worst team.
You really think that I'm going to put them at the bottom?
You had to.
Man.
It
is so bad over in Chestnut Hill right now. And I got to say, Candace, like the last week, for any folks that didn't watch or didn't hear, BC lost to UConn, team that went 1-11 last year. And they've picked it up a bit this year. But BC scored 3 points against them. 3. I don't care how many offensive linemen are out for BC. You score more than 3 points against UConn.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to hear that the offensive line was the major issue. They turned the ball over 5 times.
Yep.
Against UConn, a team that they've never lost to ever.
Yeah.
And so the mood around the program, the fan base is absolutely venomous right now. They're taking it on everyone. I had someone on my YouTube page blame me. It's my fault.
Why is it your fault? You've been nothing but encouraging, I feel like.
Because I gave them hope, is what he says.
Well,
so that's my fault. And I said, yep, definitely my fault that 6 offensive linemen are out for the year or whatever it is. But the feel is really bad, and it's starting to seep deeper. They just lost a commitment, one of their top commitment yesterday, because and Halfley just looks over his head. And it's so sad, because you want to root for the guy. He seems like a nice guy. The kids love him, but the team looks like a complete and utter mess.
I feel like they look like a shell of themselves, because we were very hyped about going into the season towards Boston College. And the fact that it's just gone so incredibly horrible when it comes to just being in the trenches, but just like no morale boost. You feel like Phil's not there. Like it's emotionally disconnected from what we're used to seeing from Boston College.
Yep. And now Halfley has to field questions. I credit the Globe reporter who asked him, "Do you feel confident in your future in the with the program?" And he had to answer it, and he said he did. And then they got the Globe also a quote from the AD. So that's where it's going with BC right now. That's what happens when you lose to UConn.
Did the AD give a vote of confidence, or was he a little shaky?
He did. And it was, we have confidence that he's going to be a coach that'll lead us to win. And I don't think BC will fire him. I've already said that I personally don't think he's the right fit for BC right now. I just don't. I mean, to watch what's happened in this program, and
what makes him not a good fit, for right now?
If you just take a step back for a second and look what I think we all got blinded with how good of an interview he is.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and take a step back at what he did before this, he was a defensive backs coach for most of his career, and that was it. And everyone brings up Ohio State. He was there for 1 year. He didn't recruit there at all. Mm-hmm. And he was a co-defensive coordinator. He wasn't even the full defensive coordinator there. He's never had a chance to run a program. And the big issue with him is that he has, and he mentions it himself, and I mentioned this on Locked On BC, he has no idea about the offense on this team. Or I don't want to say he doesn't know idea. He's not up to speed on it. And as you've watched the offense, it's clear that he doesn't. I think that's a big issue. Like, he just doesn't. I feel like he's drowning. That's what I feel like. I feel like maybe 5 years, if he got more experience and went someplace else and tried that path again, and then maybe went down a level to try and coach, I could see Hafley pushing himself back up. But right now, like, there's no adjustments in game. There's no adjustments from game to game. And you would want to hope that you'd figure out, even with an offensive line that as bad as it is, you could, a coach that understands the offense should be able to figure out something that they can do. He hasn't been able to do any of that. And they just look complete, as you said, they look flat and completely lost. Oop.
Oh, you cannot hear me. So you sat there and saw me do a whole read without saying a mumbling word. That is lovely. Now let's run this back. So there was a lot of dead air. Apologies there if you are listening on the audio space. I had my mic on mute. We are all live here on YouTube, but we're going to keep things rolling. These days, every new potential hire can feel like the high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates. Go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Now that you know all of that, bam, bam, thank you, ma'am. We can proceed. I did have a question about Boston College before we move on to the rest of the rankings here on our show that we do each and every week with AJ Black of Locked On Boston College, as we close the loop on it. Hafley certainly maybe has too much dip on his chip, but when you're looking at who would you rather have, is it, I just need somebody who's had some coaching experience.
Yep.
I need someone that offensive minded. Like, what would be the fix if he ends up not working out?
So I think what BC needs is a proven winner. And I don't think it's and I'm not looking at, like, someone said, like, members is always like Dan Mullen. I'm like, nah, I don't want Dan Mullen here. I'm sure he'd be fine, but a big name I'm looking at, and it's a lower school, but the dude has won all over the place. A guy like Bob Chesney at Holy Cross. Holy Cross is 8-0 and could potentially win the FCS. The dude just wins. He wins a lot, and he can run a program. He's done it. Like, he runs Holy Cross. He's run the schools before him. So he knows how to run a football team. That, I think, is way more important than finding the next young, hot recruit coordinator out there. Again, you can't do that. I don't want to see a retread like I forget who they keep bringing up, but there's Dan Mullen's a good example. I mean, he'd be fine, but like, I don't think that would be a good fit. A guy like Chesney, he's from this area. I could throw a rock and hit him from where I live right now. And I think he'd be a perfect fit. A young coach, think he would do it. Like, and to me, again, I go back to, he worked at a Catholic school. He's from this area and he wins.
Yeah.
Check.
Sometimes you just need the bare bones of the basics to get you back on track. So I hear you.
Yep.
All right, let's switch gears here and talk about the best teams here in the ACC. As we know, each and every week, we love to talk about the guys who are doing a little bit better than most. And so with our top 5, let's sit with our number 5 team right now. Here in the ACC, how would you rank them, AJ?
Okay, so Did you say bottom 5 or top 5?
Top 5.
Okay, top 5. We're going to ignore the bottom 5. We're
Yes.
going to keep them down there. And at number 5, I am going to put the Florida State Seminoles.
Okay. We had a nice little game against Georgia Tech. For those who don't know, don't get a chance to cover around the ACC. They beat the Yellow Jackets 41-16. It was a handed win, and it was something that it's been a fresh change to see them win in dominant fashion.
Yeah, and I look at the next game. They've got their rivalry game with Miami this weekend.
Yep.
And I could see one of two things happening. First of all, Florida State should just take them to the woodshed because I just feel like they're much better and faster, and Miami is a mess right now.
Absolutely.
But it's a rivalry game, and one thing I've learned from watching rivalry games is stupid things happen all the time.
Absolutely. But I will say, if it does have some stupid stuff going down for this one, Florida State needs to just hide their hands, because I don't know what to tell you. If there was ever a time that you could dominate Miami, this is the weekend.
There's bigger questions if they don't, but I feel like that should be something they should do. But.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, number 4.
Number 4 for me is Louisville. They're jumping up in my rankings.
Okay.
I took Wake Forest out after this. I know they're 6-2, but
well, when you want to talk about head case, as you were talking about Boston College and emotional investment, like that was a disconnect game for me for Wake Forest.
Oh yeah, that game came out like what was it, five turnovers in the third quarter or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
if it could have gone wrong, it did go wrong. And I think, every year you had the one hiccup game, and I thought that game was for them Liberty. But for this one to be against Louisville team that has been struggling all season and up and down, credit to them. They are fighting for your boy Satterfield. They are trying to sit here and say, listen, this is our coach. We are trying to play harder. We're trying to figure it out. I'm sure Malik Cunningham is playing hurt. They're doing the damn thing defensively. It's hard to just look away from the improvements that they're making.
But I even putting them there, I beg to ask the question: how did they lose to BC?
I
don't understand.
There's some head scratching losses around the horn that I think when you look back at it, like getting beat by Georgia Tech is crazy. Getting beat by Boston College is crazy. Getting beat by Virginia Tech, even if it's a close matchup, NC State, I'm looking at you, it's crazy. Like it just shouldn't happen. And yet here we are with some of these teams. All right, number 3.
All right, I'm going to go with Syracuse on this one.
Okay.
I was battling between them and number 2, and obviously number 1's going to be Clemson.
Sure.
But a loss to Notre Dame, and I'm really worried with them losing Garrett Williams, like for the rest of the season.
Garrett Williams is confirmed out, defensive player.
He has cornerback. Sorry, their star cornerback, who's potentially most likely going to be an All-American, tore his ACL. He's gone.
Wow.
And it's looking back and looking ahead a little bit, I guess, with Syracuse. Like I've said all along that they've had no schedule, but they beat NC State. They hung but lost to Clemson. They weren't all that competitive against Notre Dame. And now they got 3 straight games against tough opponents, I think, against Pitt, who always plays them tough because they're a rival, Florida State, and Wake Forest. And then they can pound BC to end the season. And so I hate talking about this. But, I think, again, it's not a shot at Syracuse. It's just where they're at. And I think kind of whether they are really the third best team, this is going to be a good test for them this week. Like, can they go out there after losing to Notre Dame and beat Pitt?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, them playing Clemson close and then losing so bad to Notre Dame says more about Notre Dame and how well they're doing, kind of turning that corner, and why it makes a very interesting matchup going into this weekend with Clemson and Notre Dame. And that to me is going to be very much high level must see TV when it's all said and done. All right, number 2.
So number 2 for me is UNC.
Okay.
And they beat Pitt pretty easily last week, and I look at the end of their schedule, and especially with Wake Forest stumbling a little bit, and I'm like, could they win out?
Let's hope.
Virginia, should not be an issue because they can't score.
It shouldn't be an issue, but for whatever reason, they always play it close, and it
I've
makes
done
me
the show
mad.
with you for almost this is my 2-year anniversary with Locked On.
Let's go.
Woohoo! But when you look at UNC, I have always made that mistake of over evaluating them, and I'm doing it right now.
I think they're going to pull it out just based on other people, not because
Right.
UNC is going to be great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you got Georgia Tech, shouldn't be an issue. NC State, issue. Though their quarterback looked pretty. I liked how he played.
MJ's going to have a hell of a game against North Carolina. The MJ Drizzy Drake matchup is going to be fun for me. I think just because of where they are, and I would give the nod to NC State's defense over North Carolina's. But we'll get there that Thanksgiving time and all the things. Say all that to say, I'm happy North Carolina's honestly in a place where it's a comfortable lead and it's not one that they're still having to fight tooth and nail for. So.
Right.
There are positive things in that regard. We already mentioned Clemson, but I do want to talk about the bottom half of these programs. But first, I want to mention to you guys that BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs this season. As you talk about football, basketball is around the corner. That is a positive light for Boston College basketball. We can talk about men's and women's, really. Gives you an opportunity to get in on that action. You can find the latest player developments, team matchups, news podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. The fastest and easiest way to check on all of those games, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. I don't know if you guys are betting on the World Series, but I'm sure there's some money to be made there, whether you want to bet on the Phillies or the Astros. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. So we're rounding out the show here. AJ Black of Locked On Boston College, Candace Cooper here, Locked On ACC, and the teams that need a little bit of help, a little bit of love. Who we got at the bottom? Let's start number 5.
All right, so I don't want to talk about them anymore. I just want to give them a big hug. BC.
They need a hug. They need a lot. It's tough when you envision a season going a whole lot better, and then you throw your hands up. And truthfully, we said last week, Drizzy Drake and I, that they were going to win the UConn game. They're going to figure it out. But now we're sitting here saying, are they going to win a game for the rest of the season?
They're not.
Crazy.
They're not.
Crazy.
And yeah, I also got an email from a regular listener who's like, can you please stop talking about the football team? I like listening to you, but I like to skip ahead past the football stuff. And I'm like, well, I would, but football pays the bills. So
listen, welcome to the North Carolina lifestyle where basketball is king and every now and then you dabble in a little football, but maybe you're starting to change the corner here. Maybe we'll see a little BC basketball take over things.
We're going to do some third segment stuff because I did a whole basketball episode 2 weeks ago when things were really sad.
Yeah.
And no one listened. I'm like, okay, we're going to go back. And then the football talk when I'm like, you know what? I'm done with Hafley, and that shoots through the roof. So
people love the pain. People
exactly.
love the pain.
I'll handle it, Candace.
All right, number 4.
Okay, so number 4 in our sad hug me group is going to be I'm going to go with Virginia Tech.
Okay. Yeah.
They deserve to be in the bottom 2 because I watched the game against NC State, and I'm sure you probably did too. Mm-hmm. And I went to bed, after Virginia Tech scored 21 points. Actually, no, I did. That's a lie. I watched them score 21 points. I watched NC State score again. Mm-hmm. MJ started to move the ball the second time, and I went, well, Virginia Tech's going to lose, and then went to bed.
You know what's crazy? I promise you, I said to myself, oh, well, that's a wrap because NC State can't play a lick of offense. So, there you go. They're breaking away the Hokies, and sure enough, that's why you don't go home.
Yep, and that was that's a sad loss, and especially when you had it and you just couldn't put it away.
Yeah.
Again, I've said all along that this is a team that just needs more time, and
they do need time. And I think what people don't know about Coach Pry, how much he's making it more family oriented and how he's really trying to put the building blocks in place, the fundamental pieces in place to make it really much a recruiting hub where people want to come and then they get the X's and O's right. So give him a year. I think Hafley, get him out. He's in them 3 years. I think it's going to take Brett a little bit of time. Maybe Brent Pry. It's going to take him at least 3 before we start to see a turn for the Hokies. But yeah, I get you. Number 3, here we go.
They're in-state brothers. I'm going to go with the Virginia Cavaliers.
It shouldn't take 4 overtimes to beat Miami. It just shouldn't. It shouldn't.
I mean, there was some really bad ACC football this weekend. Like really, really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, between that BC game, whatever the heck happened for us, this game was awful.
Yeah.
The Virginia Tech game, I mean, like you're just watching football offenses go back 20 years watching some of these games. I think Armstrong got hurt again, if I
Yeah.
remember. And again, like when we do
Rough.
the bottom five at this point, like the last three that we've said, in the next two, well, at least one of the next two is the season's gone. It's over.
Strong stakeholders. Thanks for playing. Try it again next time.
Let's get ready for National Signing Day.
100%. All right, number 2.
All right, continuing down our sad path is going to be Georgia Tech.
They absolutely got pulverized, but hey, at least they're higher than some people with coaches who have solidified their spot.
Oh my
right?
gosh, I would say I would kill for their season right now. The
No.
win over Pitt, BC hasn't won a top 25 game since 2014. No,
They would take that in a
Georgia
heartbeat.
Tech does it with an interim coach.
I'm surprised. Like, I think if Boston College were to do that, they would rush the field because it would just be that.
BC stormed the field against Missouri last year.
Take our wins where we can get them.
Exactly.
I feel
So,
it.
Georgia Tech's just wait. I think they're just they get their finger on their watch, going, get the season over with.
Yeah.
And they're gonna try to, they've got Virginia Tech, Miami. I mean, they could possibly win a couple more games before they get, hopefully not hurt too badly playing against UNC and Georgia. Ooh.
1,000%. That Georgia one is just brutal. That's you got to play mercy rule at that. But I hope to God they figure it out. Like second half, run the clock nonstop. Like let's go out uninjured. I think for Georgia's sake, even right. Just don't play the guys that you don't need to.
I know I know it was the South's oldest. No, that's Auburn. Good old fashioned hate. That's what they call that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they have to keep doing that, but Georgia is at such another level, especially in the trenches between them and Georgia Tech. Like, it's not even fair,
I definitely hear you, but in the same vein, like that's what they probably might say about South Carolina and Clemson a little bit.
True.
Because it's been very one-sided. So you got to play who you got to play. But and some people enjoy getting, clearly Georgia fans love pulverizing Georgia Tech.
I'm sure
they don't have any doubts about that. All right, number 1 team who we're gonna give a little hug as well is.
I mean, this one is. I'm gonna have to go with Miami.
They need a hug. They need a hug and a miracle. They need a hug and a miracle because the fact that Miami games are on ESPN3 is just so wild to me. Like Miami, like of course Florida State, Miami's going to be on ABC because that's who they are. But that's my point. They are a household name. They are a household brand. You want to see them on primetime TV. You don't want to have to go search on the internets for them, and that's where their program's at.
Yeah, and they're hoping. All the talk is about, UNC and Florida State and obviously Clemson, and they want to get back into that conversation so badly, but they gotta crawl before they walk,
Yeah, they're at 4-4, and they're on the teeter-totter of the bowl eligibility.
They went from like crawling to thinking they could like Olympic sprint, and and it's fair to think that they could do that, but like with the transfer portal, but so basically with the transfer portal too, you also have to realize like sometimes it's just rolling the dice. Like, okay, is this guy gonna work? Is this guy gonna work? Are they gonna hate each other? We don't know. Let's throw them all together and see what happens.
Absolutely, and it's not like basketball where it's just like 12 together, they bond. That's all they already. You're talking about 100+ guys that are asked to come together every single week. They get together maybe January or not till spring, and like, okay, make a miracle happen. Right. It don't quite work like that, but no, I totally hear.
There's so much more communication in football where you now have guys from all over the country that have never played with each other. Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, go do all that, and we have 15 practices to figure it out. Good luck.
Literally that. It's crazy. But, sometimes you strike lightning at the right time, and maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, we're all going to be laughing at ourselves ever doubting Miami. So there's a lot to be said for that as well. AJ Black, it's always a pleasure to have you here on this show. Can you please remind folks where they can find you, follow your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Locked On BC, where we're working through it.
We're gonna get through it together, and that's
We
half
get the Duke
battle.
game on Friday night. So you know what? On the positive side, I don't have to cover BC on a Saturday, so that's a positive.
Love that.
So you can check me out on YouTube. I swear, it's funny. I'm interesting. I'm not just being down and depressing. Check it out. You can see what I have to say. Just hit the subscribe button. I'm 4 away from 600 subscribers. Would love for you to be number 600 if you get a chance to do that.
Things we love to
So
see.
the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Sports Network, where I talk BC sports and all my fans hate me. So that's fun. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC.
Love it. Guys, come back tomorrow. Alexano is back in the building. We're going to have Trap Game Thursday. Some games that, of course, everyone is excited to see, and ones that could get a couple teams caught up. You'll have to catch it on tomorrow's show. For Candace Cooper and AJ Black. Until next time.